Wonderful. Well, good morning, everybody. This is an unexpected and pleasant surprise. My hangover is telling me it's not a very nice surprise, but we'll get past that. It's really great to be back here at JFocus. I'd just like to start, as I start all of my talks here, with Matthias Carlson is awesome. And thank you for the hat, Matthias. It's one of the great reasons why I like coming to JFocus. Get a lovely warm hat and a nice warm hoodie, we call them in the UK. So last year, some of you may have seen me talking about modern software development, anti-patterns, and those sorts of things. I hope those of you who were there took away some valuable life lessons and that you've all kept your jobs and you're easily able to pay off your mortgages, which is very, very important. Today I'm going to talk about a slightly more serious topic, and that is the habits of highly effective teams. A little bit about myself. I was demoted last year to be CEO of our small startup, which is very sad because I don't really get to write code anymore. But over the years, I've spent an awful lot of time working with technical teams, everything from small startups to big government departments, distributed teams across the globe, so on and so forth. And I sort of took a look back at this at the end of last year and started to try and pick out some patterns that I'd seen with teams that worked really, really well, and patterns with teams that didn't work so well. So, quick question to the audience. Who here thinks they are currently working in an effective team? Wow, only about 10% of you. Good. You want to be like these guys. These guys were a very, very highly effective team. And there are lots of reasons why they were. They had a shared common goal: defeat the bad guy within 25 minutes, or the 5-year-olds watching TV get upset. They had a common culture. They ate a lot of pizza. And they complemented each other in other ways. So here are kind of the 9 habits I'm going to cover. There's a little known secret that when you go to a conference talk like this and your brain is full of exciting new information, like the new Lambdas talk that Richard just gave this morning, you'll probably only walk away from this talk with 3 points. So you don't have to worry about trying to memorize all 9 and worry about being overloaded. Just try and take away 3 things from this talk that most resonate with you. So the 9 habits I'm going to cover are things like there has to be strong leadership throughout your team, and not just from the so-called boss. It's got to be right from the lowest person, most junior developer, all the way through to the CEO. You have to have a common culture. And the common culture doesn't necessarily mean we all go play games together on a Friday afternoon instead of doing work. It actually goes a bit deeper than that. It goes with a culture like we shall do no evil as a core value of our business. I might make a small joke about that later. Does anybody here work for Google? Nope. Good. Am I being recorded? Yes. Good. Okay, so first habit. Go, clicker, go. No. Pays to switch it on. Yay! I know you have a few football fans here in Sweden. And one of the things that are really, really important for a software team is social interaction. Now, I would argue, and I probably said this last year, that social aspects of software development are actually more important than the technical aspects. Okay? It is actually better in your career over a long term to develop your social skills, to develop your social coding skills, to figure out how to work in teams properly. And the reason is because we're all very tribal creatures. This is based in basic human psychology. And I'm going to run a little test on this. So I would like everybody on this side of the room to please stand up. Go on, stand up. This is your morning exercise. And within 3 seconds, I want you to yell as loudly as you can. If the person recording the voice can take their headphones off, because this does get quite noisy. Okay, so on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1, go! Awesome. Okay, sit down, please. Now, the great thing about humans and their tribal nature is that they're incredibly, incredibly competitive. Would this side please stand up? Now, I don't know about you folks, but I thought that group over there was a little bit wimpy. Now, the tribe on this side, you're the stronger tribe, aren't you? Are you the better tribe? Yeah? Yes. Okay, on the count of 3. 3, 2, 1, go! Perfect, sit down. Thank you. Now, 30 seconds ago, you were all friends. And within 30 seconds, some idiot on stage has persuaded you to get into a competition to yell at each other. I mean, it doesn't get much more tribal and primal than that. So you can quickly see that humans can split up into these groups. You've all seen it at school right from the age of about 3, where people form their little groups of friends and they point fingers at the other group over there and laugh and make jokes, and there's a sort of them and us thing that goes on. And that's deadly within a software development team. It's deadly within a project team. So if you work for a company at the moment where your developers are separate from your testers, which are separate from your operations staff, go tell your bosses they're doing it wrong. Okay? They have created a culture of them and us. And the two sides will never ever get on. Okay? They will never like each other. They'll never hug at the end of every workday and say, "Great job testing my code and finding those bugs for me. Really enjoyed that." So try to make sure that when you put together teams, or when you discuss this the next time with your team leads, etc., you have to bring everybody together. They have to be part of the same tribe. Other rules that you should try and follow, lots and lots and lots of social interaction points. Your team should be constantly communicating. If you find that you're writing code all day long and talking to nobody, and then at the end of the day you do a really big commit, which everybody loves, especially if it's over 1,000 lines long, great for code review. Again, you're creating a really, really awkward situation because you're not socially interacting with your peers. So try and make sure that you're on the IRC channel. You get up every half an hour and go and talk to your colleagues face to face. Get on the phone if you have to. This is especially important if you're working remotely from your teams. Okay? Red Hat is quite a famous company for this. They actually have a lot of their developers distributed all over the world, and yet they still managed to produce a highly excellent Linux operating system. They managed to produce the JBoss suite of application servers, really complicated software. And one of the reasons when I observed them working was because, again, through mailing lists, IRC channels, and things like Google Hangouts, they were in constant communication with each other. Even actually more so than teams who sometimes sit in the same room. For those who know about Dunbar's number, 150 people is roughly about the amount of networking connections you can hold in your head. This is why if you've got Facebook, you probably have about 150 friends on there. You should go take a look after this and see if that's right for you. So that also means that in organizations or in teams or in strategic units that grow beyond 150, the social interactions break down. Okay, you no longer know who everybody is in the overall team. It's very difficult to get them to work together as a unit and move an idea forwards. So again, this is why Google recently split itself up internally back into what it calls a series of small startups. So there is no team in Google which even comes close to being 150 in size anymore. And the reason is because they wanted each team, each group, to have social interactions at the core. Don't be the lone coder in the corner. And the classic example of this is, does anyone here watch the Linux kernel mailing list? Few people? No? Is it people heard of Linus Torvalds? Yes, good. He sometimes writes some very angry emails, which can be highly entertaining. And the very famous one around this was, there's a scheduling system for the Linux operating system, so it can decide what process is going to run when and where and how fast. And a new completely fair scheduling system had been proposed by this developer, somebody or other, I think, somewhere in Australia, from memory. And he just came along to the mailing list and dumped this huge patch onto the Linux mailing list and said, here it is, I've empirically proven this scheduler is better than the existing scheduler in Linux. All bow down and tell me I'm awesome. Linus tore this guy to pieces. And this is Linus, who's not really known for being the most social of people. And his argument was, you've been completely antisocial. You haven't had social interactions at the fore. You didn't communicate with the other developers on the kernel. This is the first time we've seen anything from you, just at one big giant patch. Go away, I'm never going to accept this, even though I will admit it is technically better than what is currently in the kernel. So it's a valuable lesson to take away. Habit number 2, strong leadership throughout. Does anyone know who this guy is? Nobody? You don't watch rugby here in Sweden? Really? Should I put up a picture of ice hockey instead? Probably, yeah. So this guy is Richie McCaw, otherwise known as New Zealand's greatest hero. We recently won the Rugby World Cup. Sorry Australia, sorry South Africa and England and everybody else. But the key thing that you would hear the sports commentators always say about the All Blacks, which is the rugby team, you have 15 large players on a field and they're basically trying to beat each other up to get a ball over the other line. When you think about it, it does sound a bit silly. But no more than ice hockey, where you have sticks where you hit each other to get a tiny little puck into a net. Key thing is that when you watch the All Blacks, there is really strong leadership throughout all 15 players. Okay? In any given situation, depending on what pattern the players are in the field, depending on whether the ball is in the field or out the field, depending whether they're close to the opposition's line or not, or whether they're going backwards, you would always see a small group of players taking charge straight away. Okay? No hesitation, no looking to the captain to ask the captain what to do, no immediate decision-making, immediate leadership. Okay? And that is actually the sort of hidden key strength of the sports team. I like to call it this principle. So leadership is basically actually go and do stuff. Okay? If you're not going to do stuff right at that moment, then step out of the way of the person who is doing something. If you're not doing either of those two, then maybe you should just get out of the room entirely if you're not going to be helpful, if you're not going to show some leadership yourself. Leadership happens at all levels. It shouldn't just be down to senior developers, technical team leads, project managers. I would almost argue that most of the managers I've seen are actually really poor leaders. A lot of them are chosen either because they were the most senior developer, or perhaps they were quite good at administration type tasks and keeping a team well organized, but they certainly haven't shown leadership and vision and that sort of thing. Servant leadership is another important aspect, and again the Google guys talk about this a lot. And the servant leader is someone who will do whatever it takes to help keep their team moving. So, for me as an example, I'm the CEO of our company. The first thing I do every morning when I get into work, and I get in about 15 minutes ahead of the rest of the team, I tidy up the office so they've got a nice working environment. I make the coffee. It's such a small, simple thing. And it makes my team instantly productive when they walk in, because they can smell the coffee beans roasting, they've got a nice big cup of coffee in front of them, and they can get straight into their day. And I've gone to other management meetings where, managers say, that's insane, you're the CEO, you should be busy finding new venture capitalists or selling new, finding new partnerships, not making coffee for the team. That's what some lowly students should be doing. But those people have got it wrong. The idea again is you want to make your team as effective as possible, so you do whatever it takes to do that. That is not a leader. I will say no more on that topic. Empowerment versus control. So, if you work for a large organization in particular, or a government department, anyone here works for a government department? Yes, they're the worst. They build these amazing structures around them, these organizational hierarchies. In government, it's especially deadly because you've got the civil service, the long-term bureaucrats, the ones that have seen 10 governments come and go. And the problem is when these organizations build these really strict hierarchies, is that they become very inflexible. Okay? And being inflexible in this industry, in the software industry, is about the stupidest thing you can do. Okay? I'm probably going to offend a few people in the room here now, but ask Nokia about being flexible or not. Ask BlackBerry about whether they were flexible or not. And if you looked at the way they behaved internally, they weren't. And they weren't therefore flexible enough to survive when new disruptive technologies and new disruptive ideas came along. It also leads to the Peter promotion principle. People tend to get promoted to the level of where they're actually incompetent at their job. Scary when you think about it. It means that every single CEO of every single company around the world, every president, every prime minister, is at their level of incompetency. It's quite frightening. So organizations that take away a lot of the hierarchy are actually, especially in terms of the software development industry, a lot more flexible and therefore a lot more effective. It means things like you're empowered. Developers are actually empowered to make technical decisions. Who here has an architect in their team who tells everybody what to do but does no coding themselves? Yeah, a few people. I hate those people. We call them the ivory tower architect. And they only produce two things: Microsoft Word documents and Visio diagrams. And they're just awful. So a highly effective team allows the on-the-ground developers to make the decisions, to make the technical decisions. You're the ones who are actually building the software. You should have a say in how it's being architected. There should be no software architects in any team. Every developer is an architect. Every architect is a developer. Simple. Again, about empowerment and control. Teams that are highly controlled, the managers tend to not hire people who are smarter than them. They feel threatened. Okay. Highly effective teams do exactly the opposite. They hire specialists, they hire people who are exceedingly good at what they do. They build an environment where those people can work comfortably. Coffee in the morning, 2 screens, 16 gig of RAM and that Mac Pro power computer for you to code on or to watch YouTube videos. Either or. But then the leaders or the managers will get out of those people's way. Okay, so I've got, for example, a UI UX expert on my team. I certainly have my own vision for the product that we build, but I had to learn to let go and trust in her judgment because she knows far more about the field than I do. And I might have these nice little instinctive ideas, but the work she does is based in real empirical science and 12 years of industry experience. So when I actually got out of her way, our product progressed a lot more quickly. Couple of quick stories. Has anyone here served in the army? Ooh, quite a few of you. Oh, you'll like this story then. So a friend of mine who was a soldier in the New Zealand Army was on a training exercise in the jungles of, I forget where exactly, an island somewhere off Singapore, as I recall. And they were going through the jungle, cutting their way through with machetes, etc. Lieutenant was leading at the front. Go, lieutenants. And then the lieutenant got lost. He just disappeared. The lieutenant went left, the rest of the platoon went right. Oh dear, now we only have the sergeant in charge. So my friend, who's a very experienced tramper, hiker, he does a lot of mountaineering, that sort of thing, said, okay, well, we're all clearly quite lost. How about we go downhill towards the river, follow the river down to the edge of wherever it goes, and we'll either find a town, a village, or the beach, and we won't be lost anymore. And then we can call in a really expensive American helicopter to go pick up the lieutenant, if they ever find him again. So he said this because of the whole empowerment control thing, in the army, very rigid structure. So he asked the corporal, do you think this is a good idea? Can we go find this river and head downstream? And the corporal goes, it might be a good idea, Private. I'll go ask the sergeant. Goes and asks the sergeant, Sergeant, do you think this is a good idea? I'm not allowed to make those sort of tactical decisions without the lieutenant's authority. Can we see the problem here? So sure enough, they sat in that jungle for about 10 hours until finally the privates just rebelled, got up and started walking out of the jungle. So yeah, when you have these really rigid structures where there's just too much control, teams are not flexible, teams get stuck in the jungle. Not good. Next effective habit. You have to have some sort of shared goals. And this is surprisingly difficult in a software team. And the reason why it's difficult, and I'll get back to these 5 points, the reason why it's difficult was because of this guy. Have people heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Yeah? So generally speaking, the very first thing you want to do is make sure that you've got a roof over your heads and you've got some food and some water. And only after those needs have been satisfied can you start thinking a little bit more abstractly. I would like to have a career in the software industry. And once you've got that working and you've got a steady job, okay, now I want to be the CTO of our company. I want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Or maybe not. So everyone has these private goals. And the problem is in a team, everyone is on that different level of Maslow's hierarchy. So Sven might have just had a newborn baby, and the only thing he cares about is sleep. He's not worried about writing test-driven developed code. He just wants to get in, survive the day, and then get back so he can have 5 minutes of quality time with his new daughter until she screams at him, falls asleep, and then he wakes up every 2 hours, as babies tend to do. Young George is a new graduate in the same team and wants to build his career. So he's off researching new technologies, submitting lots of annoying pull requests with bits of Clojure and Scala because this is going to be better for the team. And he's trying to get attention from the team leads and from the managers so he can advance his career. Amy is the technical architect. She's been with the company for 10 years, and she actually has some stock options with the company. So her primary goal is to deliver really strong, stable software so that the company overall financially does well. So immediately you've got 3 people who on the surface look like they're in a functioning team, but they've all got extremely different needs that day. And unless they have these shared common goals, they're quickly going to fly apart. So going back to the original picture, when you specify goals, you've got this concept of having SMART goals. So the goal should be specific. We need to deliver this screen for the accounting team by Friday. It needs to be measurable. Did you deliver the screen for the accounting team by Friday or not? Pretty simple. It needs to be attainable. Okay, so it's got to be something that can be defined usually in a 1 or 2 day work time frame, or a week at the most. If anyone tries to estimate or plan beyond 3 weeks in software development, they are completely kidding themselves. It's got to be relevant. So the goal should be, build the screen for the accounting team, not let's all go learn Scala this week because it's fun. And again, it should be time bound. So we must achieve this goal within 2 or 3 days, for example. If you make sure that the goals for the team are set in that context, then you'll have these strong shared goals that, Amy, Sven, and George can all share together, even though themselves have got their own separate needs at the time. I won't comment on this too much, but there are some large technology and software firms that we know and love who have lots and lots and lots of different competing products in the same space, which is insanity and shows an organization that does not have shared goals. Okay, and those organizations are starting to struggle in the marketplace. How am I going for time here? Not too bad. Cool. Does anybody know who this is? And no, it's not Matthias Carlsen. Yep, Brutus stabbing poor old Julius, who did nothing wrong except for being a vicious dictator, in the back. So respect and trust is talked about a lot, not just in software development, but in society. And I have a real problem with it in terms of the software development industry at the moment, because we talk about this idea of having a meritocracy in open source software in particular. We have this idea that you need to go in and earn respect. You need to submit patches of a certain quality before you can be considered to be part of the group. You have to sort of show all these credentials, and you're not really trusted until you do so in a lot of these projects. So this is kind of a very nice quote that I'd like all of you to either sort of internalize or take away with you. It's really, really important to have this in your team. Extremely important. Especially if your team is offshore, especially if your team has got junior members in it, so on and so forth. And the key thing is about the trust factor. Who here works in a team where they are not allowed access to production servers? Your company does not trust you. Flat out. Okay? Your teams do not trust you. There is a lack of respect going on in that organization right there and then. And I'm not kidding here. If they can't trust the very people they've hired and they're paying good Swedish krona for, or euros, or whatever currency might be, they can't actually trust them on a production server. That's concerning. That's very concerning to me. If you have no respect and you have no trust in your teams, people will start to misbehave. I can guarantee you that the people who don't have access to the production servers jump through all sorts of hoops and try all sorts of tricks to make sure that that really important configuration change goes into production. Who here has tried to sneak around their official policy to get a change in that needed to get in? Right? Now, if they trusted you in the first place and they'd said, hey, everybody's grown up, here is the way you behave on a production server, no, we will not give you root access, but still, you are allowed to make a configuration change, these sorts of things wouldn't happen. And people would stop misbehaving so much on, production boxes and things like that. Respect should be assumed to start with. Okay? People should be thought of as competent until proven stupid, not the other way around. Okay? So in a lot of teams and a lot of organizations I see, there's this idea of, well, we need to sort of sandbox this person away from anything important in our code base or our production servers until they have earned our respect and trust. No, you should flip it the other way around. Give them the trust and respect first. If they don't behave properly, then you can ban them. Perfect example of a team that has very little respect and trust for each other. For those of you who follow the football, the Netherlands is generally seen as being one of the most gifted, talented sides in world football. Sort of typically them in Brazil are mentioned as should win the World Cup every single time. And the Netherlands always get to the quarterfinals, every single time. And then you start reading the stories in the papers. XYZ, Van Persie, is being paid 28 million euros a day to play for Manchester United, and he comes into training late, and his poor colleagues who are on 5 kroner a day playing for the second division club back in the Netherlands, starts shouting at him in the dressing room. And the whole thing starts to escalate, and before you know it, half the players have stormed out, the coaches quit, the Dutch get beaten in the quarterfinals yet again, and once more I lose £50 to my friends because I dream that one day we will get there. It's just never going to happen. Teams have to have a common culture. if they want to be effective. Here we have a team which all share in the common culture of Morris dancing. I don't know if you have an equally silly thing like this here in Sweden. If you do, come find me afterwards because I need more funny photos. But they have a common language of behavior. And the key thing is here is that a common culture shouldn't just be a poster on the wall or a mission statement that the CEO gets you to read out every morning. It's a core set of values such as we believe in automated testing across the team. We believe in delivering software with the solid principles. We all try and follow the single responsibility principle. We all value continuous integration. We have a culture of DevOps. These sorts of things are what actually really strongly bind a software team together. No matter what sort of nationality, age, academic background, history, or anything that people come from individually. If you can build these strong common cornerstones of your team, and again, it's not the small group of people that go out to the pub or smoke the cigarette outside. That's something completely separate, and actually something that can divide teams because not everybody likes to go and have a drink of beer. Not everybody smokes. Okay? But you can get the entire team believing in that culture of test-driven development, for example. Or we have a culture that when we do benchmarking, we do it with real science instead of just lighting candles and guessing. Probably covered all these points, I think. Again, the shared values of the team or the company as a whole. Do no evil, unless it kind of makes economic sense to do evil. Yep, good thing I'm being recorded. So I'll tell you a little story about myself and my career and one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. I was a young man in New Zealand, full of confidence. I'd just been made the technical team lead of a large Java EE research and development team, about 20 people. And we had an offshore team coming in from Bangladesh. And I was very excited. They were very highly qualified. I'd interviewed them over the phone. They had excellent credentials. They were going to be a great addition to our global team. Fantastic. So in true New Zealand tradition, I decided, well, I'll welcome these new people to my country, and I will take a group of vegetarian Muslims to the pub for a New Zealand barbecue. It was probably the most awkward half an hour of my entire career, sitting in that pub realizing that I just really arrogantly completely gotten the idea of what was culture for the team. I thought culture was we all go out and do team days together, we all play ping pong, we all do this, that and the other. No, completely wrong. I had to learn to build real values, what actually mattered to the team and what we were trying to achieve. So we did start out with, we value not using struts. We value not using JSPs, and we sort of went on from there. Trying to think about time. Start at 10 past. Yep, okay. You go a little bit quicker. Another habit, which is very important, is automation and tools. Who here has to fill out a timesheet manually? Oh my goodness. Whereabouts is the camera? It's up there, isn't it? Okay, hi camera. To all the bosses out there, if you are making your employees fill out timesheets manually, you are stupid. Stop doing it. Absolute waste of time. I do not want to ever see highly qualified software engineers who are some of the most creative, talented people on the planet making the world a better place, quite seriously, filling out timesheets, filling in expense claims, doing all sorts of stupid things which should have been automated away for them. We kind of live in this world now where we have all these software as a service things. Expensify for your expense claims. Online timesheet systems which just automatically track your time usage if that's what project managers really care about, and they shouldn't. Oops, it's not going to work. Okay. Right, so, again, I don't want to see engineers manually writing release notes. Pages and pages of Word documents to hand over to another team to manually type in commands. Automate that. That should be a bunch of DevOps-style release scripts. It should be tested, and you should be able to, at a single click of a button, release and deploy software anytime, anywhere. Okay? Do not waste your time manually working on infrastructure. Put in the hard work up front. Get a team culture around this. Anything that you've repeated 3 times manually, you're software engineers, right? So write some code to automate that problem away. What else we got? Yep, I've mentioned the third-party SaaS services. I'll go on to my favorite story. If you've ever worked for a legal firm, they charge every 6 minutes. I know this because I'm in a new startup, and my lawyers are the biggest expense I have for my company. When I talk to them over the phone for 30 seconds, that's a 6-minute charge. So when I was working for this legal firm, we manually had to fill out every single 6 minutes that we worked in pen and paper. Guess how many minutes in a day I spent filling in timesheets, which I then had to charge to the client? Utterly, utterly ridiculous. And it was a waste of time of all these high-powered lawyers thinking as well. They should have been spending time, drafting up legal documents, arguing with each other that lawyers like to do. And on average, we discovered they would spend, whoa, major collapse. This is an advertisement for JFocus. Ladies and gentlemen, do come again next year. So these lawyers were just wasting their time, 36 minutes a day each, filling out timesheets. Slow handwriters, I guess. Absolutely horrible. Certainly at JClarity, our startup, we've learned to automate the living daylights out of everything. We only have a team of about 3, so we can't afford to spend any time doing manual timesheets, releasing software, CRM, invoicing, payroll, all that sort of stuff has to be automatic. Okay? Because I simply can't afford to hire manual people to go do that for me. Okay? And that is certainly the way that you should think about your teams and your organizations going as well. It is just far more efficient and lets you get on with the real job of designing software and writing software. In a highly effective team, debate is encouraged. And I don't mean arguing with your partner, which most people do. I mean healthy debate, structured debate. Has anyone here actually done debating at school? The formal debating with 2 teams of 3? Sort of, a few of you? Yeah. That's the sort of style debating is what I mean. It's good to argue in software. People should be passionate about their ideas. We're not doing something which is easy. At JClarity, we apply machine learning algorithms to determine performance bottlenecks. Kind of a non-trivial problem. And if I had engineers on my team which just sort of shrugged their shoulders and agreed with each other on how this problem should be solved all the time, we would have a terrible product. Okay? So our team sort of argues and debates all of the time. A lot of people, they fear it. They don't like the idea of this sort of to and fro. Some cultures, especially in the East, their entire culture is against it. So, for example, in some countries such as Thailand, it is considered extremely rude to say no to anything. So they will either say yes, or they will sort of say something to the side of the conversation. Okay? So getting software development done in those cultures is, again, even more challenging, because you've got to find a way to communicate where someone is allowed to say no to you while still saving face. If you are going to have debates, they have to have some sort of a framework. Okay? We make sure at JClarity, because we have a bunch of really clever PhD and top people in their field who are strongly opinionated. So we make sure that the discussions are time-boxed, so nobody gets too overheated and gets too angry. We try to have a culture where we say experience is always trumped by empirical evidence and by data. Okay? I have seen it, especially in the Java space, that I've got 10 years of Java experience, And we've always used Spring and Hibernate, and therefore we will use Spring and Hibernate in XML configuration for all the things. And that usually leads to a big pile of disaster. And junior developers especially won't argue back. Wow, this person over here has got 10 years of experience. Okay? It's a complete fallacy. Always try and use real empirical data to define your debates and your arguments. And the other key takeaway is the person who is trying to win the argument, as it were, or is trying to change things, the onus should be on them to prove their point and to persuade the rest of the team to come along with them. Okay? You should never leave anybody behind, because if you have a developer who's not part of who isn't in line with the idea of what you're trying to achieve, or who doesn't understand that whole chunk of Scala at the absolute core of your application, you've just left a team member behind and you've split your team going forwards, and it's really, really dangerous. There was not enough debate at BlackBerry. I will say nothing more. As a bonus couple of slides, in terms of structuring debate and structuring technical discussions, is one of the things that you come across most in a team is choosing the right library, framework, technology approach to a problem. And judging by the number of Java web frameworks out there, it's quite clear that you have a lot of choice. Judging by the languages on the JVM you have out there, again, you have a lot of choice. And there are a lot of religious wars, especially about whether Eclipse or IntelliJ is better, that sort of thing. So if you haven't seen Matt Rabel's talk, you should, or find his slides on SlideShare. He has a fantastic approach to this. Set out some criteria of what it is you're actually trying to achieve with this technology choice. So let's say in the case of, I'll use jQlarity as an example, we were trying to decide which NoSQL database technology to use because we knew we were going to have our data distributed across the world, and we wanted to have some sort of master-slave replication or master-master replication to keep all the data in sync. So that was one concern. We had another concern with we want our business people in the team to still be able to actually query that data. So that's another important concern for making our technology choice. We want it to be secure because our traffic will be streaming across the open internet, and the NSA is already listening on everything I know, but still you have to try and make an attempt. So on and so forth. So we set out criteria, we add weightings of how important each of those criteria were for us. We would then all as a team vote, give it a score of basically 1 to 10 in each category, add up all the numbers, and whatever the top 2 outcomes were, we would then actually go away and try them. And this is really, really important. You have to go away and prototype new technologies. Pick the hardest thing that you're trying to solve in a week-long sprint, and see if that new technology, framework, library, whatever, solves that for you. So here's an example, which I've stolen off Matt from JFocus a couple of years ago. If you're ever a conference speaker, this is a pro tip, by the way. Steal slides off your fellow speakers, praise them afterwards, and then apologize for stealing their slide later on. So here's an example where Matt has gone and compared a whole bunch of Java web frameworks. So it's got Struts 2, highly popular, Spring MVC, Gwt, Grails, Rails, so on and so forth. It's got all the criteria down the left, whether it's got internationalization support, quality of the documentation, so on and so forth. And that's how him and his teams kind of effectively, structure a debate around choosing new technology. Habit number 9, diversity. Teams that have a monoculture in the software industry will die very, very quickly. Okay? Our industry is moving far too quickly. Technology is outward looking. We push boundaries all the time, or we should be. And if everybody thinks in exactly the same way, you start getting the problems where you see code bases of Java, masses and masses of Java, with anonymous inner classes trying to solve a functional problem. There's one example I've seen. You'll see people using JSF, full stop. So on and so forth. So you really want to have diversity in your team so that you get different points of view, and that can be anything from people from different cultures and backgrounds, but primarily people from different cultures and backgrounds within software development training. So do not just go and hire computer science graduates with the same grade from the same university who've all been taught the same thing. Okay? You will build a monoculture and you'll quickly build really bad software. Nice corporate slide. The bottom point is really, really important. You have to allow, software developers are very creative people, despite what society thinks, that they're just boring, logical number crunchers. So you have to give your teams and your people a lot of space to be creative. Whiteboards, 20% time, lunchtime sessions where they can come in and present a new technology or a new idea, so on and so forth. And this keeps your team constantly on a good edge of technology and picking up new ideas and avoiding that monoculture. You know, someone might discover a web framework outside of JSF and voila, you can actually write some decent software again. Classic example of this was Nokia. Made up of a lot of people who came from the same universities, towns, backgrounds, so on and so forth. As an organization, they never saw Apple and the iPhone coming. Just never saw it. Never could have, right? They were just focused on producing the same phone time and time again. Slightly better every single time, mind you. Tiny little increments every single year. But when the tidal wave came, they were too late and the company almost died. I'm not even sure if it's alive today. Someone can tell me afterwards. The London Java community that I help run back in London is probably one of the most multicultural, diverse groups of people I've ever had the joy of working with. It's been a fantastic experience. And the best thing is that there's a huge diversity in terms of, technology interests, so on and so forth. So we run book clubs, code and coffee. There's a Scala user group that came out of us, a Clojure user group that came out of us. There's a big data little group in there. And I've learnt probably more in the last year in my career than I did in the previous 10 working for large sort of monotype organizations. Almost at the end. Won't keep you too much longer. Bonus habits, technical debts. Be boy and girl scouts. Clean up as you go. Technical debt will kill a company. Netscape Navigator. Does anyone remember Netscape? Yep. They built up so much technical debt they had to take the tough choice of rewriting the browser. Took them too long and they died. So it slows you down, makes teams really inflexible. Don't have a sort of 1 week tidy up every month or a 1 day a week tidy up. Build it into your culture that every developer tidies up as they go. Okay? Always leave the code in a better state than what you found it in. And I've cleverly timed this so that, yes, you are allowed to have questions, but we've only got 30 seconds. So instead I'll leave you with that. Come and find me afterwards outside. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Hold of me. There are some cards with my details on here.